Kia ora, good evening and welcome to our Facebook Live. Firstly, apologies, we are a bit late, we've had some technical difficulties this evening, but we're here now and we're ready to answer all of your questions. With me tonight we have as our elected members who are the people that represent you in our community, here to answer all of your questions. I'm going to go straight to them. They're going to introduce themselves to you and then they're going to tell you the thing that they love most about our city.
Yeah, kia ora, me Grant Smith. Lovely to be here. What do I like about Palmy? Its size. Very much like our vision. Small city benefits, but a city that's got a bit of ambition.
Kia ora, Rachel Bowen. What do I love the most? I think that there is so much to do and that so much of it is free or low cost, so really accessible for our wider community.
Kia ora, good evening, I'm William Wood. And similar to the Mayor, I love the fact that Palmerston is such an easy city to get around. There's nothing I hate more than waiting in traffic. When I go to Auckland or Wellington, it always reminds me how much I love being in Palmerston North, being able to get anywhere in 10 or 15 minutes.
Kia ora, I'm Lorna Johnston, and the thing I really love about Palmy is the community. It's just friendly, people are prepared to go out their way to help you, and you know, you can't walk across town without meeting 10 people you know, and that's what I really like.
Hi, Leonie Harper. The thing I love about Palmy is that it is such a great city to be in and live in. I just love living in Palmerston North.
Hello, I'm Olfemi Cullen, and I think the thing that I love about Palmy is just the people and the affordability that it provides compared to cities of similar size.
Awesome. So why are we here tonight? Well, we're here to talk to you about our long-term plan, which is our plan for the next 10 years of our city. It outlines our services, our projects, our plans, and then the budgets that are associated with it. So that's what we want to chat to you tonight, because we are in consultation. That means now is the time for you to give us feedback on what you want to see, what you don't want to see, and any other comments you have about our city. Please, if you have questions, drop them in the comments section. We're here tonight to answer all of your questions live. If you ever want to talk to us at any other time, the best opportunity is this Saturday. Our staff and elected members will be at the Planning Palmy Expo at the Conference and Function Centre between 10 and 1. Lots of activities for the kids as well. We've got the recycling trucks, we've got diggers, we've got water pipes, we've got lots of fun stuff to keep them entertained while you ask some of the harder questions. We can't wait to see you there. But right now we're going to crank into the questions and I will go perhaps to you first, William. Why should people care about a long-term plan?
That's a really good question, Liv. So the long-term plan is one of the things that I love about the way that local government operates. Often we say we'd love to see local government or government sectors planning for a longer period than just the next 3 years, and so that's what we do. We look at the next decade. So although what this sets in stone is what's going to happen in our city over the next 3 years, it gives us an opportunity to look further at what's going to be going on in, say, 5 or 10 years' time, and gives us an ability to plan out a collection of works rather than just doing things sporadically when they show up. So I think it's a really exciting way of doing planning for a city.
This long-term plan is different to probably any long-term plans we've done in recent years, just because of the sheer number of challenges we have. In our consultation, we're talking to you about the big transport projects, the big water projects, growth, housing, all of that. But we also have 3 big topics that we want you especially to have your say on. One of them is changing the rating system. That's recently, since the consultation started, about why rural residents will be paying more. You are a rural ratepayer, so could you explain some of that to our community?
Yeah, thanks, Liv. Look, I suppose they call them lifestylers. So you're in from 0.2 to 5 hectares, and look, ultimately you don't pay as much as an urban ratepayer. So I've lived in both, in the city and just on the outskirts of the city. You don't pay for, you have to take care of your own water sometimes, and definitely your own wastewater. But you share, like all other people in the city, the use of the roads, the use of the parks, the use of the libraries, theatre and everything else. That's probably somewhat missed in the bigger collective, but also there is a discount that is put on rural lifestyle properties, and that's something that we've had a good look at. Because the cost to bring services, even some roading connections. An example is Kelvin Grove and Stony Creek roads. Now we're spending many millions, and to be fair, those communities have advocated for that for a long, long time. But that's an example of sharing the cost. So when they say, or when I get colleagues and neighbours and say, well, we don't get anything, they actually do get to get out of their home and into the town, the city, on a road. They get to share all those other facilities I spoke about.
We might stay on the rates review because it is probably one of the most important parts of our long-term plan. So people seem, I guess rates are really confusing, right? We all understand and appreciate they're not the easiest thing to explain. Rates are essentially a tax, and when people hear that we are consulting on changing our rating system, they have a belief that we are trying to get more money out of our community, and that's why we are doing this. Rachel, do you want to set the record straight about why we are asking the public for feedback on a rating change?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, Liv. I think people do automatically assume it's, people call it a money grab, and that's not at all what this is. This discussion's been going on for a number of years here in Palmy. The discussions happened all around New Zealand, actually, and elected members in different territorial authorities about what's the fairest way to base our rates calculation. And that's been the conversation that we've had, and an awful lot of work has gone into that. But it's not about increasing the amount of rates that we take, it's about how we divide up that amount, what proportions the people pay, and what is the fairest way to calculate that. So the three options that are there, land value, capital value, and then a mix in between. The discussion that we had, we made an in-principle decision a couple of years ago to look at the capital value, because around the table we felt like that gave a clearer connection to people's ability to pay. It's not a direct correlation, but we felt like that was giving us a better basis for charging rates that were fair to our community. And then when we got further into that work, it turned out to be really, really complicated, which is why we've ended with this hybrid option of going mostly land, a little bit of capital, to try and bring that balance of levelling out, smoothing out some of the big shifts we've seen. And anybody who remembers that last valuation round will know that lots of people saw their rates go up a lot, and they told elected members all about that. And quite a lot of people saw their rates go down as well, but we didn't hear so much about that. And we think moving to a capital element provides a way to smooth that out a little bit for people. There'll still be changes, but we think on balance that hybrid is the fairer option, but we're really interested to hear people's views.
Lorna, I guess you're probably one of our most well-known elected members for making a push towards a capital value system. I guess who are the people that would benefit from that, and who are the people who might, face higher rates? Because I guess we have a tool on our website where you can go and search what your property looks like, but I guess it's really important for us to explain who those people are, so especially those people can all go and have a look. So do you want to maybe talk through that a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, if you have relatively large amount of land and a fairly modest house, you're paying quite a high proportion of the rates. If you have a very small section, even if you have a very fancy house on it, you won't be paying as much rates. So, if you compare two properties, one that has a decent amount of land, but perhaps an older house, a smaller house, with a modern, perhaps two-storey house on a small section, they might be paying quite different amounts of rates, but they might be equal in value if you looked at the land and the improvement together. So, I guess what we're trying to do in proposing a change is to link the amount of rates that somebody has to pay as much as we can, given that we have to use property, towards their ability to pay those rates. And my belief has always been that the evidence shows that those who have got $1 million house on a small section have more ability to pay than someone who has a $200,000 house on a big section. But it's not simple either. So I think the message is definitely, if you want to see what's going to be for your property, use the tool that's on the council website and look it up, because it's not straightforward always. Depends on where you live, and it depends a little bit as well on the neighbourhood that you're in. Yeah.
Awesome. I will. Grant is keen to say something, but Leona, you're a business owner in town, and business owners are ones that I guess it's especially important for them to have a look. What's your message to businesses? Because this affects them just as much as residential ratepayers.
Thank you, Liv. I think the business owners really need to have a look at that tool, because I think they are going to be affected by this tool. So I think it's really important that they go in by this change in the rating system. If they don't have a look at what their new rates are going to be under this new potential change, then they might get a really big fright when they get their rates in the new system and the new going forward. So I think they need to have a look at it before we do go ahead and change the rating system, and then put a submission in, because I think at the end of the day they might get a really big fright. I think that of all the sectors, that's the sector that might get the most disadvantaged out of all of this, is the commercial sector.
Right, Grant?
Yeah, I think it's all been really good comments, and there's been a lot of comments about the residential, and I don't disagree with any of those. The commercial and industrial, that's where you see and unfortunately we can't have a separate sort of system for them and a separate system for the residential one. It's one size has to fit all. So your big industrial, and that's where Palmerston's got we're one of the big three logistics nodes for the country, or distribution hubs, and that's where we will see some massive swings. So I do think there needs to be some balance in it. That's my personal opinion. But again, we do encourage anybody and everybody to put a submission in, and I think the little web tool there, where you can search tools, on the website's very good. I've got a lot of good feedback and commentary on that. You can put your property in there, and you can get the three options, and then you're more informed. But I think council on a whole was wanting to see a little bit of balance on that, because it's very hard to just flop from one to the other, because there will be some quite big changes.
So in terms of our rating review, as everyone said, you can search it on our website. That's pncc.govt.nz/rates review. Now, the discussion about the rates review is part of our long-term plan consultation, so you can have your say on what option you prefer on our website and on our hard copy submission forms. The councillors, our elected members, will discuss that in late May and early June, and they will have an outcome for you ahead of 1st of July. So if we stick with land value, what we do already, all good. If we look at a hybrid option, that can be phased in from the 1st of July. If we were to move to a capital system, we would have to phase it in over a period of time. We might come back to rates review if we get more questions on that, but I'm going to switch to a completely different topic now, and I'm looking at Orphe. Orphe is one of our youngest elected members, so I thought this might be a fun one for you. The nightlife in Palmy is horrible. How are you making it better?
I think that's a good question, actually, because I think my desire has always been to ensure that we introduce recommendations or facilitate business activities in the CBD, and also just encouraging recommendation or policies or plans that ensure that Palmerston North is a thriving place for a lot of young people, or a dynamic place for them to be in. And I have to be honest, as a young person who's been really much involved in nightlife here as well in Palmerston North, as well in Wellington and other places as well, we've seen a lot of bar closures and that sort of thing, and for a lot of young people to ask themselves, what is it, for me there in Palmerston North. But we've got a bustling, Broadway Avenue, street that's beaming with a lot of restaurants and bars as well, and that sort of thing. Yes, we might not be to Auckland or to Wellington or other cities, but we do have, a lot of stuff going on around Broadway, and I encourage everybody else to come down on a Thursday and Friday night to see, how busy, and or Sunday night as well, to see how busy and alive Palmerston actually is on a weekend.
It's clearly a fun topic, because Councillor Bowen and the Mayor both want to comment on it.
Yes, definitely from that youth adjacent angle, maybe. Yes, it's a tricky question for sure. And Palmerston North isn't unusual in experiencing some of the up and downs that our wider hospitality sector have seen. We have some settings in that space that we look after. Things like the licensing rules make a difference to how businesses are able to operate. The hours they're actually allowed to be open is something that council controls, and that does make a difference. But there's also things that make a difference, like how safe people feel to be in our central city, which is a nighttime problem, obviously, but it's also a daytime opportunity as well. And that's something this council's worked really hard on, is about what does it mean for the central city to be vibrant and therefore safe. And we feel like if we get those settings right, that helps businesses to be successful in that late night market. And there is some investment going into the city. We've got a new big club opening as soon as they get their fit out done, and it's going to be amazing. So there'll be some exciting nightlife in Palmerston North come the summer.
I thought we could ask the Spanish football. Seriously, one way we can, council does enable things to happen is like live music, events, supporting our theatre sector. We underplay the arts and music, and Palmerston North used to have a fantastic live music scene. It's not quite like it used to be, but it's not quite like it used to be in a lot of other cities too. But we do have a jazz festival, an international jazz festival. We have great local community theatre. We have a professional theatre which the city supports. We've got shows like Matilda on at the moment, because we've got one of the best amateur theatre societies in the country. We do have quite a lot going on. The food is a big offering here too, and we underplay our restaurant and cafe scene. And look, I think Alfay's right. We've just got to enable those things to happen. It's a pity the Spanish didn't see some of that. Look, I think Palmerston North, as far as a regional city, is quite, and we're a young city too, so we've got quite a bit going for us.
We are getting a lot of comments coming in, which is great. Lots of questions coming in. So I am going to be mean and make you start having shorter answers so that we can go through them, okay? We've been talking to a lot of high school students and also older people, and one of the big concerns in the city is our young people leaving the city. Young people are thinking about moving to different cities for the universities. Older people are noticing it because their grandkids aren't in the city. What are we doing to try and keep our young people in our city or bring them back?
We can only control what you can control. The council can't do everything, but we work closely with our tertiary providers, and it'd be fair to say there has been a bit of angst in that sector with the universities and the polytechnics. But it's always been traditionally a strong suit of Palmerston North. Again, it goes with the last question really about nightlife, restaurants, vibrancy as well. I still think Palmerston North does have a great family offering. It's keeping those post 18, and to be honest, a lot of people do want to leave. Yeah. You only can control what you can control. You make it attractive for them to come back when they're 20, 21, 25, whatever, and I've seen my own son do that, where he's come back.
Cool. Leonie.
Thank you, Liv. As an employer, we employ kids that are 16 to up to 30, and it is really hard to keep them because they do want to leave and go to other universities, but we do keep them here in Palmerston for as long as we can. So they're in school and then they sometimes go off to university, but sometimes they do stay. So it's an interesting question, but keeping them here in Palmerston is sometimes really tough. But we do want to try and keep them here, and it's a really a tough angle, but we do try to keep them here as long as we can as an employer.
Yeah, I think like the mayor said, I think the council cannot do everything by itself, but how do we stop probably the brain drain? It's probably by just ensuring that Palmerston North remains an attractive place for a lot of young people to remain, and that's the work that we do now. In some of the stuff around community facilities and providing and enabling that infrastructure for them. But we also understand that there are a number of reasons as to why a lot of young people leave Palmerston North. It's either to attend other universities, and also overseas experience. But in my experience, I've also seen a lot of people coming back in their mid-30s because they've seen that Palmerston North being, the regional city and affordable. They tend to come back in a good, and they see Palmerston North being a great place to raise a family. So it's natural for people to migrate to other places. You always have people wanting to do overseas experience and that sort of thing. But they'll always, a lot of them have tended to come back to Palmerston North to raise a family, for example, buy a house, because it gives them that affordability and accessibility. So, yeah.
We're going to move on to another topic now. One of the three big topics we are proposing is some of our community facilities. We're proposing upgrades to 3 community facilities and 3 new ones. In terms of the upgrades, we are looking at leasing a space for our multicultural communities to use. We are at the arena. You probably know it as Barber Hall and Waldegrave Lounge. They have some seismic issues, and we are looking at knocking down those buildings, creating a new facility with some turfs and more space for events and sporting facilities, which we know that our users have been desperately crying out for. And the third one is Te Motua Potua Anzac Park, where we have we're in partnership with Rangitane, our iwi there. We're looking at building a civic marae with visitor education, schools, everyone to be able to go up there. That project is unique in that Rangitane is going to contribute to that project financially, and it wouldn't get started until we have all that funding in place. Grant, I am just going to throw to you on Te Motua Potua. You've probably been involved in it in the longest.
Yep.
People might see that as a nice to have at this point in time. What would you say to that?
So 150 years ago, Rangitane, and that's why we've got a statue of our former Indigenous leader there, Te Piki Te Awiawi. The partnership between the city and Rangitane goes back decades, a century and a half. The city signed forming an agreement with them around 7 years ago. So this project has been on in the thinking for some time. Timing's everything, and Rangitane feel the time is right, and that's the one project which they have advocated for solely amongst all of the projects that they're involved in. They're putting money on the table. We think we will have other external funders as well. So the city, it's a joint venture, so we're not solely doing it, it's very much a joint venture. And look, if you think of other strategic things like Whareawaka down in Wellington on the waterfront, that's what we will have, but with a very much Rangitane flavour.
So other community facilities that we're looking at, we are proposing an expansion of the Pacifica Centre at Bill Brown Park in Highbury. We are also proposing to expand Te Pā Tiki Tiki or Highbury Library. The one that's probably got the most attention is our proposal to have a new library community hub at Awapuni. Early last month, a $2 million land purchase there at St Mark's site where the church is to build this new facility. People are asking, why does it cost $27 million? Can you guys answer that for our community? Lorna, can you take that one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I think the first thing to say probably is why are we looking at doing anything in Awapuni anyway? And the answer to that is that we've had one of our community libraries in Awapuni for some time out of a rented premise. It was unavailable for several months last year while it was being repaired, and it just brought home to the Awapuni community how valuable that community library is. But it's not really meeting the needs of the community anymore, it's too small. And when we look to the future, we know that we've got more houses planned to be built between the end of the city where it is now, at Maxwell's Line, and longer. And we know that there could be up to 6,000 houses there. So we need more facilities in that side of town. And as well as that, we had the opportunity to purchase the land. The church had been offering it to us for several years actually. And we just felt that it was a good opportunity to take that land, which is in such a great position in the centre of the sort of Awapuni village, and provide not only library facilities but a community hub, and also it could serve a civil defence purpose. So, in the event of an emergency, people will gather there. So, why is it going to cost 27 million? That's just a placeholder budget at this stage, based on, I believe, a square meterage of the size of the proposed building. So we don't have detailed design yet, and we don't have, a detailed costing. So I think at this stage, we're talking really about the concept of the thing. Is this what we want? And the other factor I think that's important to mention is that the central city library is earthquake prone, and at some point we're going to have to strengthen that. And it would be really good while that was being dealt to that we had another reasonable sized library that people could use whilst Central City Library was closed. So it's a forward planning thing really. It's forward planning for library facilities for Awapuni, but also as a fallback for when Central City Library is being dealt to, and also forward planning in terms of the development of the city, which will be developing out to the west.
So in terms of the community facilities, you can read all of the proposals on our website. We also have our consultation material at all of our libraries. You can also come and chat to all of our elected members on Saturday at the Conference and Function Centre with those community facilities. The options there that we have are you can support it as it's proposed. You might support the idea, but you might have some feedback. That might be things like the cost or how big it is or where it is, any of those type of things, or you can just tell us that you're not a fan. We are just going to move on because I guess one of the other big topics at the moment that we're all hearing about is Featherston Street. Obviously Featherston Street is not a project in our long-term plan, but we're getting a lot of comments coming in. Grant, I'm just going to go straight to you. We'll touch on Featherston quickly, then we'll get back into some of those other questions.
Yeah, so look, I've seen a lot of chatter about Featherston Street, and look, it'd be fair to say when you're judging something that's a quarter or half finished, it can look a bit of a disaster. But look, I would just ask people if you're looking at judging a building that's only half built, you've got to really wait till you see the finished product. And I'd say we need to do that as a council and probably as a public as well. The lights haven't been synced yet. Obviously, there's still quite a lot of work to be done on the ground. Look, I've got some concerns too, like some of our residents have with access in and out of different properties, the bus stops. But I'm just going to leave my judgment until the thing is properly finished. It's very hard to make an informed decision why it's all half done.
Let's briefly touch on, we have got some of our councillors here, but I've also got some waiting to talk to you soon. So we will just ask a couple more questions of this group and we'll do a bit of a switch over. William, I might throw to you now. People are asking us, how does these projects work with our borrowing and how we borrow money? Can you explain how council borrows money?
That's a really interesting question, Liv. So one of the things coming into council that you learn about is the concept of intergenerational investment, so that when you build something in the city, it's not just for those who live here today, it's for the next 30 years or potentially the next 50 years. Something like the new Arena 5 isn't just going to service those who live here today. And so one of the things we do is when we undertake capital new projects, which is when we build something new, we spread it out over a 30-year period and use debt to finance it, rather than something like capital renewal, where often we're fixing a road or a pipe, we'll use rate funds to do that renewal. And so in terms of how our debt works, a decision that's been made in council is that we did have our debt set at a limit of 200% of our income as a council. We've decided to, or proposing to increase that to 250% of our income, getting up to about 247% of it around year 6. And so we're really interested in your feedback around what the size of our capital program is, what we're spending money on, and ultimately where we end up as a part of that, as a percentage of that income.
Leonie, I'm going to give the next question to you. How do we balance the projects that might be seen as nice to haves versus the ones that we have to do? In our long-term plan, we have water, obviously, is a big part of the work we need to do. We have growth work, we have seismic related upgrades. Would you like to start? And then what I might do is I might pass on to some of the other elected members to comment as well, if you'd like.
This is a hard question, Liv, because it is really tough around the council table. We have done this work around the council table. We've all voted our own way around the council table, and I think what people need to do is go in and do their homework, read through the documents online, or if they've got a paper copy, and they basically need to make their own decisions on what they need to do in terms of the submission. We want to hear from everybody about what they think needs to be put into the long-term plan. I've got my own views, but my views are my views, and I think people need to put their own views in, and submissions are really important that we hear from the community about what your views are. And so I can't tell people what to say in a submission, Liv. I think people need to put their own views into a submission. So I'm just trying to be honest, I'm not trying to fob that off, but I think that people need to put their own views in, they need to read the document, put their own views in, and go from there.
Could I add to that? Sure. Really touching on what Councillor Harper just said is when you're reading through that document, take note of what you really like in the project, what project, different views and what they believe is essential. And so as Councillor Harper just said, it's really important that you go through and make a submission on what you believe that is to help us make an informed decision.
We'll do quickly, but can you answer quickly the rest of you? And then we've got one more question before we switch groups.
Quickly. I've lost my train of thought there entirely. What's important is, and the discussion we've had as elected members, is balancing the very real cost of living crisis that we're in now, but also keeping an eye on the city that we want to live in the next 10 years and leave to our children and grandchildren to live in. So that's the crux of the matter in this long-term plan. How much do we pull back to recognise the difficult times that we're in? How much do we dig in and invest for a future that makes this a great place to live, not just a place that we survive in?
Yeah, and before I come back to you, Lorna, I think it's a real balancing act, and everyone around the table here has really grappled with that. Nobody wants to put rates up, but if you look at your own home household bills, they've all gone through the roof. So we've tried to balance everything out. In that long-term plan, the vast majority is legislated. So we've got $1.1 billion worth over the next 10 years of water costs. We've got nearly 450 million of transport costs. So, I mean, some of these are really big, and they're the majority of our capital spends. So, I think Rachel's right. The nice to haves have gone. Maybe how some of the projects we're doing, we possibly could, maybe a developer could build Awapuni, I don't know. But, you know, some of these places deserve, and they've been advocating, hasn't come from a council, it's been advocated by the community. So I think the seismic strengthening of buildings, legislated. So I think that people have got to understand there's not a lot left that council can decide on. Majority of the work, we have no choice.
Well, we'll just go to Lorna. Did you still want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Grant's made some good points there. The fact is that everything that's in this plan has come from submissions from the community previously. So particularly the community centre upgrades, they all came to us through submissions in the last annual budget and long-term plan. So they're not some councillor's dreamed up project. They're needs that the community has brought to us and said, can you deal to this? This is important to us in our part of town. And that's what we're trying to respond to. So I think we do have a responsibility to look after social well-being as well as economic, as well as the roads and the water and all the pipes and everything. We have a duty to look after our own community, and I think it's very important that that's part of the whole plan.
Awesome. I'm going to wrap up with the last question for this group now, and then we're going to bring our other elected members through. You've got one sentence because, we want to get on to our other group of people. People say that you don't listen. So can you counter that? Can you explain what a good submission looks like? If people are giving feedback, how do they get in touch with you? What would you like to see? What does good feedback look like? And feel free to touch on that question about not being listened to. Let's go around in a circle, maybe 1 or 2 sentences each.
I've been given the word. So look, if you've got a submission and if you want to change something, give us a solution. So if you don't say keep the rates down, don't like that. Give us a little bit more feedback on the solution. As I said, classic could be around some of those community centres where perhaps they could be a build and lease. So I mean that's just an example. We love to hear the submissions, and please do. And sometimes tell us what we're doing well, too, if we are doing anything well.
Hey, I've been around the table for a wee while now, and one thing I can categorically say is that every annual budget, every long-term plan changes from the proposal to the final plan based on your submissions. We absolutely do read them, we listen. If you've got good ideas, if there is weight to what you're suggesting, if you speak for a particular community of interest, we want to know who you're speaking for, how much weight we can attribute to that, and we will listen, and that will come through in our decision-making processes. The evidence shows that that happens every time.
I perhaps jumped the gun on my last answer, which is much the same to this, is really be specific. What we love to see is, as the Mayor said, ideas on what you'd like to see happen and comments on things that you really are appreciative of. Because as we go through this prioritisation process, if there's something in there that you read and you go, oh, that's great, I'm glad it's in there, and then we get no submissions on it, we end up in a situation where it might look like it's not backed by the community. So just as when we say, if there's something you might like to not see, put a submission in, absolutely when there's something you like to see, put a submission as well. I've only been around the table for a year and a half, and I've seen firsthand a number of examples where I've changed my mind or other councillors have changed their mind based purely off the submissions we've had. So it really does count, and I'd encourage you, if you say your submission doesn't count, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you don't make one, then we're not going to see it.
Yeah, I think I would say is tell us your why, you know. Why is this important to you? Why do you want us to do a certain thing? Why do you not want us to do a certain thing? Because I think if we can understand where you're coming from, it helps with the decision making. And just, you know, I think be specific. So, you know, if you're talking about a particular project, be specific as to what you would like to see, what you wouldn't like to see. The more detail we can put in it, the better, to be honest. Really helps us just to understand where you're coming from and what you really, you know, do want us to do at the end of the day. So, and if you can, please come in and talk to your submission, because that gives us the opportunity to ask questions, to clarify what people really want, and I think that that's important.
Pretty much what everyone else has said, because it's hard to repeat everybody else. But I think turning up is really important, coming in and talking to your submission. We do read them all, but actually turning up as well is really, really important. So we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Just want to also add on what my colleagues have said. I mean, submissions are a great way of providing us feedback on what, you know, the plans that we're proposing. And we do listen. As elected members, we do not work in silos. We do listen to the community, and sometimes, on many occasions, I have changed my views based on the submissions, on a submission that has been submitted through the process. So I think what a good submission looks like is define the issue, provide specifics of what you want us to do more or less of. And don't just be generic and say bring rates down or put rates up or don't do this, don't do that. But be specific in your submission and tell us exactly what you want us to do, so that we can make informed views on that. And also, we are also sometimes, I mean, there are 16 elected members in one room, and many of us have different views. So sometimes we might not get everything across the line, but we do listen to all the submissions. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Righty-ho, we're going to switch over to our new group of elected members now. So thank you for joining us on the couch. We're just going to do a quick switcheroo. If you would like to talk to our elected members, they are going to be at the Conference and Function Centre this Saturday between 10 and 1 to answer any questions that you have. You can also reach out to them. We have their contact details on our website. We are often asked whether Facebook comments count as submissions. We do export your name and your comment out, and they do see those. They don't technically count as submissions, but they do get to read them. The reason we really want you to make a submission is that we ask you a wide range of questions, and when you look at that submission form, you might go, oh, actually, I do have a comment on that. So getting some of that additional information and your reasons why you don't like something is really, really helpful. Now, we are going to get started with our next group of elected members now. And we are going to do a bit more of a quick fire. We've got lots of questions that have come in about housing, about transport, about safety especially. So we'll do a bit of a deep dive into them, but please keep the questions coming. We're loving seeing them all coming in. I asked the last group of elected members who were sitting here to introduce themselves and say what they loved about the city. I'm going to put these ones on the spot and say, can you introduce yourselves and tell me one thing you would change about our city?
Oh, hi, I'm Pat Hancock, City Councillor, second termer, What would I like to change about the city? I'd really like to see the city have a youth wellbeing plan.
I'm Katie Spellin. I think what I would change is our reputation.
Kia ora, good evening. Vaughan Dennison's my name, and one thing I'd like to change is again around the perception, around the misperception of Palmerston North. I think we are a great city with family friendly feel to it, and when we have the national tournaments that we have in the city, people do change their minds. So if we can continue in that vein, I think we'll be doing very well.
Good evening, I'm Mark Arnott. I'd like to see less vandalism around the city, and the city's spending a lot of money fixing things, and I'd certainly like to see that figure come down dramatically. Thank you.
Okay, let's get into the questions. Let's start with housing first. We're being asked, what are we doing on Huia Street? Huia Street, if you're not sure, corner of Park and Fitzherbert Ave, used to be an old sports space. Now we are looking at it for housing. We've gone through the first tick boxes, I guess, through government, and now we are getting into the guts of it. Vaughan, why don't I come through to you? You have a chat about housing.
Yeah, great. Well, housing is very important for most people because that provides some security, and what we're looking at in Huia Street is some medium density housing. We're looking at 3 concepts around intensification that are multi-level, and actually the best spend in my view is actually using that and creating an opportunity where we can have as many people accommodated there in ownership, and even a mixed tenure where we've got some rent to own opportunities in the possibilities there. But again, once we decide on the preferred option, that'll go out for consultation for further engagement with our community.
We are one of only 3 councils in the country that do social housing, and it's probably, I guess I'm not an elected member, but it seems like one of the topics that most of our elected members all typically agree with, the idea of investing in social housing. Why is that the case? And I guess we're looking at doing more of it, right?
Yeah, so it's been in the DNA of the city for a long, long time. I suppose if you look at one of the first government social housing projects was Savage Crescent, and it happened here in Palmerston North along with Taita and Polarua. So it's sort of been here for decades. The city hadn't done a lot other than just maintained its houses for a number of years, but we as a council 2 terms ago decided to do Papiaoia Place and redevelop that, and I think it's up for a New Zealand Property Award just in a couple of weeks' time. But it's been a fantastic outcome for the city. Those other Vaughan and others have spoken about Huia Street and Summerhays. There's opportunities there. Doesn't mean to say council needs to build it all ourselves. There are a lot more other community housing providers now. We can do joint ventures with others. That's where I think council probably could get better bang for its buck.
Pat, I might just throw to you. We do a lot in the housing space. We are looking at rezoning land for housing. We are using council land for housing. I guess what areas are you particularly interested in? What, I guess, would you encourage the public to try and find out more about and have their say on? What kind of information about housing is helpful when you're looking at submissions?
Yeah, well, if I could just sort of pick up on what Grant was just talking about just a moment ago, is that I think it's very important to bear in mind that like councils actually have a legislative requirement to actually look after the social wellbeing of its citizens. And of course, we actually know here in Palmerston North that we've actually got around 700 people actually on the waiting list for housing. And these are people who, for various reasons, they don't fit the state housing kind of concept. They don't actually have the income to actually fit into the not traditional sort of areas of housing. So that's where the council can actually come into its own and actually provide housing for those people who are in need of housing. And housing has been an issue for our city and right across New Zealand for quite some time, so I think we have certainly a responsibility to follow that through.
Katie, come to you. In our long-term plan, we are proposing some funding to support homelessness in our city, to try and get people to stay in their homes, to try and avoid people ending up sleeping rough. We're proposing $230,000 a year over the next 3 years. Do you want to talk a bit more about what that looks like?
Yes, yeah, I can. I think that a lot of people will have noticed that there is an increase of people that are on our streets and who aren't in secure housing, but we also are looking at the wider picture of people not necessarily on the streets but who are in insecure housing, in transitional housing, and who don't have solid options. So we're looking at the whole spectrum of housing insecurity. So this package is really designed to provide connections between services who already provide support to people experiencing housing insecurity, and to put wraparound services around, I guess, the actions that would be the biggest impact for people who are experiencing that.
Grant, I'll come back to you. Tamakuku Terrace is one of our developments on council land next to the Calvin Grove Cemetery. We finished stage 1. We were looking at selling homes for people. Unfortunately, that hasn't proceeded. Working with housing groups is obviously a key part of what we do. Do you see that continuing to be part of our future too?
Yeah, and I'll just go back to a comment you made before where you said only 3 councils do social housing. Only 3 do it directly. Just about every city does some form of housing, whether it's through a trust or have got it in a different delivery mode. Look, we decided to do Tamakuku Terrace because we could see that nobody was doing smaller sections, and the CHIPs, the community housing providers, were very, very good at doing that work. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes we came in when some legislation around freshwater came into place. It made the development a lot more expensive, and I still think it was the right call to do. Councils traditionally aren't in that space, but we wanted to try and mix the market up because our development market weren't keen to do it. We tried the traditional developers, and they just were quite keen on their tried and true model, and that's okay. So we've tried something different. I think in time it'll be an amazing little subdivision once that's complete. It's got a retirement village on the back of it, which has been done privately. And it's got a school right next door, and in 5 or 10 years there'll be quite a buzzing little community there.
We might just move on to another topic, but just quickly, if you're interested in housing, how our city's growing, we are also consulting on our future development strategy at the moment, which is our plans for growth over the next 30 years. You can read our strategy, our draft strategy, on our website and have your say. We would love your feedback on that. It's really important you do feed into that process as well. Now, I'm going to move over to Councillor Arnott now. You touched on vandalism as one of the things that you would like to see stop, but I think everyone can agree with that. Safety is arguably one of the biggest topics in our city at the moment, so let's touch on that. Mark, I guess, what do you see as a way that council can get involved to help make our city safer?
Well, certainly council's been spending quite a bit of money and time and effort with CCTV, and we've got a lot more cameras around the city now, and that's great for keeping everybody safe. There's all sorts of things people can do if you see something happening. Report it, and speak out, look after the city. I'm sure Councillor Hancock could add quite a bit more, being on one of his passions. So maybe Pat, you could take it away.
Thank you, Councillor Ramos.
No problem.
Look, I for my sins, I chair the Palmerston Safety Advisory Board, and I chaired that from 2005 to around about to the end of 2014 when I was the police area commander here. So safety in the city has really sort of been a big part of my focus for quite a number of years. One of the things which the Safety Advisory Board has been working on sort of in recent years is we've had sort of an uptick in terms of youth antisocial behaviour, which has become quite prevalent in the CBD. So the SAB obviously has got the police and other agencies that actually sit at the table for that. So we've actually increased the collaboration and cooperation between those agencies to give some urgency around actually dealing with these young people. But another aspect which kind of has arisen out of that is we put a proposal through council to actually establish a youth wellbeing plan for the city, and of course we're actually starting to go through that process at the moment. And we held a youth wellbeing forum just in the last couple of weeks where the youth sector actually all got together and actually talked about the issues and the opportunities that we can put together. Council officers are now preparing a report that will come back to Council for us to consider our next steps forward. But certainly, I think everywhere in New Zealand at the moment probably has varying degrees of issues around sort of safety in their communities. So the city certainly has, or the city council certainly has got a place or a part to play in that whole process. So we'll be certainly giving it some prevalence. Thank you.
Do you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, so Pat's, both Mark and Pat, I mean, there's the carrot and the stick sort of approach to some of these issues. But I think it was also, you know, if the breakdown of the social glue of your city starts to happen, then there are other things, because people will say stick to roads, stick to rubbish, stick to recycling, and those sorts of things. But we do need to be involved in this in some way, because if we're not, and we've got to get, and we can't do it by ourselves, we have a role to play as an enabler. So the council gets the other government agencies involved and can be more the enabler in the background. It was good that I attended that forum at the start too, and it was great to see police, government agencies there as well, along with all the NGO and community groups, and youth were there as well.
Yeah, probably just one other comment too is really just to say that, like, you know, when we have antisocial behaviour and things like that, that actually impacts particularly our CBD, then of course that actually affects business. So therefore, it really is in the interests of the City Council to put a focus on it and actually try and find some resolutions.
I'm going to move on to a different topic now, which is one that we got asked as one of the pre-asked questions. For the amount of rates people pay, what do they get for free? Vaughan and Katie, do you want to tag team this one? You can bounce ideas off each other of all of the big list.
Yes. Well, just bullet pointed, I guess. Parks, walkways, the river park, the library, Te Manawa. What else can you think of?
Well, water, you can turn on the tap, you can flush the toilet, you can use the roads, you can use the cycleways that we've got, and walkways up into the Tararua as examples. We've got lots of recreational opportunities for passive and active lives, and dog parks and
Sports fields.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of events, community events that we provide for free. And so that's just a number that just come off the top of our
Yeah.
Esplanade theatres,
Oh, totally.
paddling pools, swimming pools,
Splash
memorial
pads.
parks, splash pads.
Yeah, I think one of the best things we've done in recent years is the Hiawaki Kotahi Bridge and shared pathway up to Longburn and out to Massey, and all the special features that we put along the way of significant sites and activating the space and people engaging with the river. That's one of the things we've been able to celebrate, and it's just so well used. And we celebrate the river with the walkways and the esplanade and everything associated with it.
1.6 million people using it.
Yeah.
One of you mentioned dogs, and dog rego is coming up, and every year we get asked about why dog registration costs so much. But also, we obviously promote dogs that are at our animal shelter to be adopted, and people have asked what that fee covers as to when they adopt it. Who would like to talk about dogs? Vaughan's looking like he's smiling.
Well, I love dogs. We've had family pets and they make great pets, and unfortunately people get excited to have a puppy, and with the housing challenges, if they've had to move and then they're not allowed to have a pet, well, then they'll get a little bit stranded and they're looking for friends and family to assist, but quite often they have to give up the animal. So therefore they end up in SPCA or in the pound and up for adoption. So I think they're really good opportunities for people to consider if they have a mind to extend their family with a pet. So our council does a great job on promoting that through our Facebook and through our media. So yeah, I think our animal control do a great job, but yeah, unfortunately there's abandoned animals that come from that.
Mark, I'll give you an easy one. You've got a young child. We have an ice skating rink in Te Manawa Square at the moment. Would we consider building a permanent one?
What a fantastic idea. I have been going down to Memorial Park quite a bit, and I roller skate. I've got roller skates, and so does my daughter, and it's great to see the rink down there has been renovated. They've ground the surface, and it's nice and smooth, and every Sunday between 10:30 and 12:30 you can hire roller skates down there for $5. So you have to head down there. That might be an easiest first step to ice skating, but it's wonderful seeing it in the square, and what a great asset being there.
Let's do another fun one. Someone has asked whether we would consider a zoo and potentially expanding wild base. I've got some excitement from the elected members who were on before. Katie, you look like you're wanting to attempt an answer to this one.
Oh, I do love a zoo. It's not currently in the long-term plan trajectory, but if that is something the public would like to see and would like us to fund, then please put your submission and let us know.
Back to some serious stuff now. Obviously transport's a big topic of things we do. Let's touch on a few questions there. The freight hub. What is the freight hub? People are asking, and what is the ring road, and when is a ring road going to come into effect?
Okay, I'll take that one. So we already have the freight hub. So it's something that already exists out near the airport. So it's called the Manawatu Business Park, formerly North East Industrial Zone. So it's now we've been gifted a name from Rangitane, Te Utanganui, the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub. So it encompasses not only the existing business park, but the new proposed Kiwi Rail Freight Hub, but also the airport campus as well. It's the only place in New Zealand where freight can leave and be distributed by rail, road and air all together. So the ring road is the missing part to get our trucking movements out of the CBD, out of the city streets, around the city and into that freight hub, but also connecting with Longburn as well, because we have a number of wet industries there with dairy industries and alike. So when is it going to happen? Well, the Regional Transport Committee have just recommended, yet to be adopted, but just recommended at their public meeting the other day that it is the #1 ranked project in the region. Mm-hmm. If that is successful, and with the new government's GPS, that work could start in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. So we've got to designate. A lot of it's on existing roads too. So it'll be the likes of Rongatea Road, a new downstream bridge. That's the biggie that needs to be built. Kairanga Bunnythorpe, Ashurst Bunnythorpe, Fitzherbert East. So a lot of those roads exist already.
Vaughan, let's move over to you. Do you want to follow up on that one?
Yeah, I just got some further things that will dovetail into the work that Waka Kotahi are doing on our Gorge project that will open up into the eastern corridor, and the government's investment into the Otaki to North Levin carriageway. They're all strategic alignments into Palmerston North and into Manawatu that are actually going to enable our strategic advantages with key sectors around distribution and logistics. And so many people are employed by those sectors, and they're only but going to grow. And those investments with government that are actually going to enable us to get the Utanganui, which is the hub that we're going to really play into.
Yeah, and they're good points for now. We're already seeing private investment. So we've just had consented and on the books 70,000 square metre buildings coming, cool stores and dry goods stores, and we've got another 20,000 metre manufacturing plant as well. So it's already coming, it's already happening. We've just got to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Pat, before I move over to you, Grant, can I just ask one quick question? Can you explain, we talk about how we advocate to government a lot. You've been talking to the new ministers a fair bit. What does advocating actually look like, and what are you saying to them?
An arm up round their back. No, in all seriousness, we've got to prove the case. So it's around business casing and making sure that the city can prove its case. In the case of this one, this is an intergenerational, this is a biggie. So we only can do what we can do. So we can advocate to the roading authority, which is the New Zealand Transport Agency, around their part to play, government itself, private industry as well. So it's really, and getting our other partners around us. So Taranaki supporting us, Hawke's Bay supporting us, and Wellington supporting us, and that actually is happening. So advocacy is around proving your case and making sure that investment, they can see the value proposition and why they would invest.
Pat, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the other thing I was just going to mention there, just in terms of the ring road, is that that's the design of that is actually not set for. I think it's actually years 2, 3, and 4 of the long-term plan. So that the design of it is yet to be done. So that will be subject to a separate consultation process in due course with the communities. That might be affected.
Moving on to a different mode of transport, one of our pre-asked questions was, I want to bike, but there are too many bad drivers on the roads. Why is it taking so long for the council to build a network of separated cycleways across the city that connect to each other? I guess Palmerston Street's probably a good example, right? The big amount of public feedback we're getting, it's a slow journey. Pat, Katie, Vaughan, who would like to take that one? You can all can if you'd like.
I'll pick up on that to begin with. Is that like the city actually adopted a master plan for cycling in 2018. So basically a whole bunch of roads around the city were actually identified and slated for cycle lanes a long time back. So it's kind of been pretty well known. That's what was actually planned. The bottom line is that all of our roads are shared spaces, and we need to actually try and encourage people to cycle and use public transport wherever we possibly can, because that reduces congestion around the city. And so actually, cycle lanes is a part of that. And one of the things which I'll say about cycle lanes is that every city in the world struggles with the retrofitting of cycle lanes into roads which were originally actually designed just for vehicles, for four-wheeled vehicles. So everybody struggles with it, but it is something that we have to be committed to. If we, I suppose, produce an incomplete cycling network, then of course that just discourages cyclists from actually getting out there and using that mode of transport.
One of the next questions we've been asked is how we're continuing to invest in our roading network. How are we maintaining it? We've had, councils have had data from Local Government New Zealand who've gone and asked all the councils across the country and had Infometrics look into it. Over the last 3 years, a 33% increase in how much it costs to do and maintain our roads. Mark, I might throw to you. Roading's obviously one of our big topics. Council is investing more in our renewals. We are spending significant amount more money in keeping what we've already got in a good condition. What would you say to people, I guess, about what we're doing in that roading space, and if they have feedback, how they can let us know?
Hello again. Yeah, well certainly, if there's roading things in the LTP that you're passionate about, certainly, put a submission through, and, it might be something like Kelvin Grove Road, and it's got issues that have been ongoing for a number of years. So, certainly en masse your submissions, and, like it's been talked about before, certainly speak to your submission if you feel comfortable in the chamber. And there's a lot of things that are different these days, and we talked about the ring road before, and it'd be great to get some of these heavy vehicles out of the central city, and thus doing that we'll keep the roads going nice for a bit longer. Thank you.
Let's do one more transport question and move on to another topic. Skid pads. Street racing has been a big topic recently, and it comes up every now and again. Why don't we just build a dedicated space for people to street race? Katie, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think there has been precedent where there have been privately owned skid pads like Slipway in Brooklyn and Wellington that have been working pretty functionally but have been shut down by councils because of noise complaints from the neighbours. In the Slipway case, it was Zealandia and the disturbance to the wildlife there that had that shut down. So I think that kind of thing is really hard to find the right place for it. Also, There is an element, I think, of that's capital investment, that's funding, that's something that requires staffing, it requires access control, it requires cleanups afterwards. It's not just the drifting and burnouts that go out there, there's all sorts of other behaviour that goes on. It's a social gathering. So where those types of events can be well structured, or family events, they tend to be really successful when they are done in outside urban areas, or if they're done in unsupervised, unlit areas, rural areas. There's always someone there who's going to be affected by it, someone who's going to object, and there's not always accountability in terms of who's going to look after the space and who's going to pay for it. So I think when we looked at that in council, there was suggestions that was a good way to get this behaviour off urban streets, but there was really mixed views from the community as to what is the best way to go forward for it.
We're fortunate here with and it is a motorsport town, so we probably have to acknowledge that. We can understand why some people love it. Manfield is an example where it's unfortunate that we can't get something perhaps going at Manfield where it is a permitted activity, where it possibly could happen, but you've got the insurance issues, you've got some of those health and safety issues which are difficult to get around. So it's very easy to say, council do this, council do that. It actually would be better if the group did that, because then they would have to take their own responsibility around health and safety, which is a biggie, because if council's involved, we have a whole lot of mandated things that we need to get involved with. So, look, it's a biggie, and I feel for some people that, you know, that just really want to just do their drifting, do their skids in their way. But as Katie said, it is quite a challenge, and we have discussed it and we have looked at it, but it was in the too hard basket.
Pete, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just a very quick comment is that like the people who actually enjoy drifting and those kind of activities, generally speaking, they want to do that at night time. And of course, if that's at night time, then of course it creates all sorts of noise issues. And the other thing too is that we have to be very mindful of is that, you know, we actually end up getting sort of, you know, long trains of these people actually going to and from where it is they're actually going to conduct their activities, and in doing so often actually creates a hazard for other road users. So in terms of the overall safety of our city, I certainly am not in favour of it.
Just for your awareness, we've had a lot of people praising the Speedway and the value that brings into our city, both from a fun perspective but also from an economics perspective. We are just, I am just conscious of the time, and I did just want to touch on two other topics quickly. One of them being waste, rubbish, recycling. We are also consulting on our waste plan at the moment. We're keen to hear what you think. Katie, I might pass over to you to talk about food waste, another one of our government requirements. But we are also keen for some ideas in that space as well. So I'll get Katie to talk a little bit to you about the waste plan. She is our Deputy Chair of our Sustainability Committee.
Thanks, Liv. So the government is requiring councils to roll out a curbside food scraps collection service, and lots of councils do that already. We did a trial of it last year, and just for I think 14 different streets we collected 16,000 tonnes of food waste over the period of that trial. To be able to deliver this service, it's about a $5 million investment in the trucks and the plant, the equipment that we would need to do to deliver this specific service. But it is something that we are legally required to do. It will be a standard that we'll have to meet. There are targets for waste diversion that we have to meet, and there are consequences for us not meeting that target. It is something that is the easiest and the biggest thing that we can divert from landfill. It's I think 31% of rubbish that went to landfill was actually food waste, and we can deal with that better. We can, with a hot composting unit, we can actually take all sorts of things like meat and bones that you can't put in your regular home compost, and we can create a resource from that can come back into the city. So it's creating a really circular way of making a resource out of waste. And we are proposing in the long-term plan that we look at what component, or could we add green waste into that service. So we just need to know if there's a demand for that.
Yeah, so green waste and food waste make up more than 50% of what's going into people's rubbish. Grant, did you want to touch on that too?
No. But I just want to talk about Speedway. Something totally different. Look, the council, and look, we are jumping around a bit, but you touched on a really good point. So one of the best things that council did in the last term was the improvements to Arena. And we went out on a bit of a limb. We did that during COVID, and I think we got magnificent bang for buck. Some of it was external as well.
Shovel ready.
Yeah, shovel ready sort of type project. We produced the new concourse, the entrance to Arena. We gave it a front door. Always felt like you're coming in the side or back door. We put the new pits in, and it is the best speedway probably in Australasia, to be fair.
Well, the Speedway events each year alone, if you discount any other event that happens at the Arena, brings in more than $30 million into our city in terms of hotel stays, spends, employment, a really big part of there. One topic, this is completely different now. There's been a lot of talk that we are planning on renovating the Regent and the library in Te Manawa, that we're doing some cosmetic work. Just want to clear that up. We are not doing that. We have legally required seismic upgrades to our facilities, really big part of our draft long-term plan that we do need your feedback on. Pat, do you perhaps want to talk about those legal requirements for seismic and the fact that, we have to do them?
What can I say other than the fact that government has required all buildings that are earthquake prone to be remediated in a given period. And I think certainly the clock is ticking for a number of. I think we've got 26 earthquake prone council buildings in the city, and I think in this term, I think we're actually looking at I think maybe about 6 of those buildings to actually have earthquake strengthening done. The Regent is going to be the first cab off the rank. It is thought at this point in time that the requirement for the Regent is actually relatively minor, but of course you don't actually know what you're going to find once you actually start that work. So certainly the Regent is first cab off the rank, and these are things which are legally required. We don't have a choice, they have to be done.
Thanks. I just want to add to that it is a legislative requirement, but there's also a time frame on it that we have to abide by. But particularly with Te Manawa and the library, the initial costings that we got for the seismic strengthening, like for like, was near on par for what it would be to reimagine the space completely. So we thought we'd take that opportunity to ask you whether or not we should just strengthen it and keep it the way we've got it, or whether we can do better with those facilities. Sort of bring them up to more modern standard and make sure that they're fit for purpose. So that's really what we're asking there.
Yeah, good points. And just to add to that is some of the options were council not doing it all and having either some external funders or development partner in it, especially with the 2 big ticket items being the library and Te Manawa. But look, we have already, just to allay some fears too, we've already started some of this work. So we looked at our critical facilities, wastewater, water plant, freshwater plant, crematorium at the cemetery. Those projects have either been done or just about finished. Then you've got, as Pat sort of alluded to, the Regent. That's relatively minor in the bigger scheme, but we have got some bigger ticket items to come. So what we've done is we've advocated to government around a review of the legislation, which I understand will probably be announced, and with other councils to lengthen the time frame to give. Otherwise, you will see vast demolition happening in probably small town New Zealand. Then it'll start to the cities, and by the time it gets to the capital, they've realised that probably got a real problem.
Right, I'm going to wrap up. There's still a lot more questions. We will be answering them. Check us out tomorrow for answers. If anything you've asked tonight, you've got more questions for us, for our elected members, Saturday, they're going to be at our conference centre at the Planning Palmy Expo between 10 and 1 to answer your questions. I'm just going to ask you all one last question, and I've asked the last group the same question. People say you don't listen to them. What would you say to the people that are telling you that?
Put in your submissions. I mean, gosh, we spent 4 days deliberating to try and get something that was we felt was a reasonable draft, and we've spoken to all of the the lead sectors to get a bit of a community feel. Look, we will listen. Send in your submissions, but try and come and speak to them as well. So much better when you are there in person, because we can ask you questions as well. So we welcome them all.
Yeah, for me, I think, certainly if you've got anything that you like or don't like, anything you want done in the city, then of course you need to make a submission. If there is 300 submissions, if there are 4,000 submissions, I guarantee you that every councillor will read every one of those. If you come along to speak to your submission, it may seem like a daunting thing to do, but you can be reassured that councillors will actually listen to what you have to say. Then of course at the end of the day, when it comes to deliberations, what the community has told us will be taken into account before we make final decisions in terms of a long-term plan. So please be involved and put your best foot forward and do something.
Thanks. I have previously held that view as a frustrated submitter, and it looks quite different from this side of the table. I think that it's a difficult balance to walk, because the view that the council doesn't listen to the community kind of assumes that the community all think the same thing and they're giving us one voice, and it's not true. There's so many conflicting voices and viewpoints that you have to hold all at once, and then you have to reconcile all those viewpoints within the context of the technical evidence that we get, the legal analysis, the research, and the context that's provided to us. So we have all of that to hold in mind when we make our decisions. And no one submission will turn a decision. It's the sum of submissions, I think, that is really important, because you get opposition, you get support, but you also get ideas, suggestions, improvements, and those are kinds of things that we can pick up and try and improve the proposal that we've put forward. So they definitely, we read them, we listen to them, and they all form a really important part of the whole picture.
Yeah, I would encourage this. One of the things that I was reflected to me early on in my time serving around this table was that currently now we have a population in the mid-90s, close to 100,000 people. And we've got a budget that includes hundreds of millions of dollars included in it. It's just impossible to please everybody. So even though that you take as a fact, you really want people sowing into their thoughts and contributions on where they see the future of Palmerston North, what's important, what isn't. That helps us make informed decisions for the best interests of everybody in Palmerston North, for now and into the future. So I'd really encourage you. I think every feedback's helpful, and I think if you can speak to it equally, I think I'd encourage you to do that too. Thank you.
Having only been on council for about a year and a half, I sort of see this process almost as important as voting in an election. So certainly, the public voice is so important. So, definitely put those submissions in, and more the merrier. And we certainly do listen. And, we're down for, I think, 3 days of hearings. If we've got to be sitting there for 9 days, fantastic. I'd actually love that. So get them in. Thank you.
Righty-ho. So speaking of submissions, consultation's been open for 10 days. As of midnight, we're sitting at 275 submissions. We've got a population of about 94,000 people. So please have your say. Some quick tips for you. There's no age limit to making a submission. So unlike voting, we've got teenagers, we've got school students submitting, just like older people, right? Everyone is entitled to have their say. You can fill in a form online or at our libraries, but you don't have to fill in the form either. As long as you put your name and your signature on it, you can write us a letter, you can email us, you can sing a song if you'd like, you could make a video. We are open to hearing feedback in whatever way is easiest and best for you. So to wrap up tonight, thank you for coming, thank you for your questions. If you've still got questions, we've got a few sessions coming up. So 20th of April, that's obviously the big one, where most of our elected members and our staff are going to be at the conference centre this Saturday between 10 and 1 to answer all of your questions. We also have some sessions next week. Monday at 2:30 to 4 o'clock we're at Roslyn Library, 4:30 to 5 we're at Ashurst, On Tuesday, we're at between 10 and 11, we're at Te Pā Tiki Tiki. And then next Saturday, we are at the Awapuni Library between 10 and 11 and 12 to 1 at the Central Library. As I said, you can reach out to our elected members at any time to have a chat to them, make a submission, talk to us on Facebook. We love reading your comments, but make sure you have your say. Consultation ends on the 9th of May. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.